Aloha and welcome to A Course in Miracles workbook for students. We're on lesson 4. And like normal, I'm going to start by going back a few lessons so that we can see the pattern. And I'm going to read the main thought for the previous lessons. So we're going to start with lesson 1. It says, "Nothing I see in this room or on this street, or from this window, or in this place, means anything." Lesson 2 says, "I've given everything I see in this room all the meaning that it has for me." And lesson 3 says, "I do not understand anything I see in this room." So now we're on lesson 4. Lesson 4 says, so we've gone from things that we see to, we're going to shift a little with lesson 4 to our thoughts. The thoughts, these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, or in this place. Unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. Then apply the idea to them. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as a subject for the idea. Do not, however, select only the thoughts that you think are bad. You'll find if you train yourself to look at your thoughts that they represent such a mixture that, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. This is why they do not mean anything. In selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. None of them represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible, and you don't want either. This is a major exercise, and it will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. The aim here is to train you in the first steps toward the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It's the first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside of you and the meaningful within. It's also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. Now, for example, you might say, "This thought I have about blank does not mean anything. It's like the things in this room, on this street, and so on." You can also use the idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but it's not a substitute for the more random procedures to be followed for the exercise. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You're too inexperienced as yet to avoid the tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, You may find the suspension of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. We will return to them later. So you see, on the first day we started with looking around the room, and we just randomly looked at objects, whatever our eyes would fall upon, and we would say, the things that we're looking at in this room, they are nothing in this room means anything. And then the next day, we basically looked around the room again, and we told ourselves that all the things that we were looking at, all of them without exception, that we have given meaning to those things. And then the third day, yesterday, we looked around the room again, and we told our mind that we don't understand any of the things we see. And now we're dealing with our thoughts that come to us, and we're applying the same principle to those thoughts that we applied to the external things in the room. We're saying, this thought that I'm having about whatever, whoever, this thought does not mean anything. So that's the way you do the exercise. First you take a minute or so and you let the thoughts come to your mind, and the thoughts that come to your mind, then you apply the principle or the statement to them. This thought that I'm having about whatever I woke up thinking, it doesn't mean anything. This thought of my having about what I'm going to do today doesn't mean anything. Whatever thoughts come to your mind, use those thoughts. And if you already have some negative type thoughts, the Course says you can definitely use those, but don't just make it your negative thoughts. If you, even thoughts that you think are good thoughts, they don't mean anything either. Because what the Course is saying is that we're beginning to learn how to separate the meaningful from the meaningless, to separate the things that are inside from the things that are outside. And this is just the beginning. And the Course says that it's going to continue to come back to this same principle again and again, because the thoughts that we have in our mind, like the things we see outside of ourselves that we've given meaning to and assigned labels to, they are actually covering up our real thoughts and our real perception of the real world. So we've got to begin to make room to allow ourselves to question the labels and the concepts and the ideas that we formed about the world, about ourselves, and about others, about situations. So, it's a simple exercise, and the Course says don't really do it more than about 2 or 3, 4 times today, and maybe in the morning, maybe when you think of it a couple of times, and maybe at the end of the day. And with that, I'll leave you with the exercise, and I'll see you tomorrow. Aloha.